Coming to you from the city of the weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm. Well, hello everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to Live Curious Realm. Chris Jordan here, coming at you from the north tip of Austin, Texas. The very top of the blue navel that is the red state. Speaking of the red state, that's where we'll be starting tonight. Not just in the great state of Texas, but talking about China. Talking about China's presence in space, talking about specifically the Chinese space plane, which oddly enough is very similar to our unmanned space plane, that recently during its third mission dropped 2 new unknown targets into orbit. With us tonight during our first segment will be our good friend Mike Turber from 5x5 News. It dawned on me as I was making the graphic for this episode, frequently the guests float from week to week the way that they do because I'm watching what's happening within the community, within the news cycle, things like that, to try and stay on top of things in kind of a news coverage kind of way, and to demystify topics as they come up, much like the topic that we demystified last week with Kathleen Martin. That was one that just randomly popped up in the community where Stephen Greer was like, hey, that alien abduction that happened with Betty and Barney Hill, that was a secret U.S. Air Force program to kidnap people, drug them, and make them think that they were abducted by aliens. So we had the niece of Betty and Barney Hill on to respond to that. Going on in the tech community, there's always all kinds of stuff. So I enjoy the conversations with Mike Turber about such things. And it dawned on me once again as I was making the graphic that we have lined up yet again all of about 5 weeks from the last time they appeared, oddly enough, together, Mike Turber and Ryan Edwards. So in the second part of the episode, we will be welcoming our good friend and cryptozoologist Ryan Edwards to talk about paranormal communities and how to build bridges between not just believers, non-believers, but believers and scientists, between scientists in different fields, scientists in different disciplines, investigators who may not be scientists, but are citizen scientists in their own right. And how do you begin building that bridge between somebody who belongs to a lot of circles that look at things in circles and somebody who looks at things in a scientific, deep way? How do you build that bridge between them? So we'll be talking with Ryan Edwards about that. I think it's an important topic because as these topics become more and more ingrained together, we have to be able to have that conversation. We have to be able to broach that conversation. And when it's broached, be able to have a conversation, not an argument. It does neither the discipline of science nor the discipline of paranormal investigation any good for us not be able to shake hands in the middle and talk. So speaking of talking, welcome back to the show, Mike Turber, 5x5 News. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing quite well. I'm doing pretty good. Good to be alive. Good to be around. Welcome everybody to the show.
Yeah,
and, it should be interesting. Be interesting. As all your shows are.
It's always interesting whenever we have you on. The conversation always goes great places, and you are tied in a different world of technology in different ways. And I like talking with you because you do belong to a few different communities that view some of this research in different ways. Some of them that are coming at it very scientifically, and some of them that are coming at it from a very esoteric and side stream point of view. So chatting with you about it, and especially chatting with you about the possible implications of technology and what they could be used for, is always a great conversation. So welcome back to the show, bud.
Well, appreciate it. And, demystifying the world that's out there of all the technological achievements that are, even there's no way even you and I could keep up with all this stuff. And we try as we might. We get hoodwinked and surprised sometimes as things just slip by and you go, wait a second, that's a thing now? I remember when I first heard transparent aluminum was actually a real thing. I said, yeah, right. And it really was. I said, okay.
Yeah.
Star Trek is more stuff coming to the truth.
And that's just it. There is a world of metamaterials, things like that out there now that make things like transparent aluminum possible. That was at one point the literal world of science fiction and Star Trek. And that's just it. Like our world of science is heavily influenced by science fiction. And it is really interesting when you go back and start reading works from people like Ray Bradbury. I cannot remember the name of, I listened to a lot of sci-fi radio drama, things like that, like old school 1930s, 40s radio drama whenever I'm on the road to go to sleep. I don't watch television, things like that whenever I'm on the road. So there was one, though, and I want to say it was Ray Bradbury, where there was a supercomputer intelligence that was made to make all of the decisions for mankind. And this thing exercised its intelligence and exercised the way it came up with its calculations so fast was that it wrote data on atoms. And that's where its massive storage capacity and speed came from. And it's like, wow, this is a show from like 1942. And they are actively talking about the concept of quantum computing.
Yep, and we are at that point right now. We just got there. With the Google supercomputer or super quantum computer, I think, what did it say? It's 157 million times faster than the fastest supercomputer on the planet. Yeah. I think that's the number. I mean, don't quote me because I think that was it. That's just dumbfounding. And when you go back and you look at all the limitations that kept us from going further and further and further, 9 times out of 10 had to do with being able to make things smaller. That way the things were closer together. There's not, you didn't lose anything. And doing that is amazing. And when you look at how a quantum computer computes, which is totally different than a binary type computer, it's astounding. It's absolutely astounding to see this in our lifetime actually come through, and we're going to see the benefits from it. That's going to happen. Those are the the NASA spinoffs and all the different spinoffs. And of course, we got a lot of spinoffs from Star Trek. Even the warp drive, which was basically brought to the forefront of everyone's attention by Star Trek, Miguel Alcubierre. That's your guy that came up with the warp equation that makes warp drive actually possible in the real physics world. He got his inspiration from Star Trek.
Yeah, precisely. And I'm actively bringing that up right now. If you go to our Knowledge Vault, folks, you'll find curiousrealm.com/knowledge. You'll find all kinds of documentation like that in there. And we actively have the Alcubierre White warp drive documents inside of here, and it's pretty wild when you start getting into it, and even the idea of the Froning quantum vacuum, things like that. When you start looking at the work of people like Hal Puthoff right now, right here in Austin, Texas, who is working on drawing energy from a vacuum. So when you're talking about a realm of technology where you can pull energy seemingly from nothing, that's pretty interesting. And I tend to think that possibly, especially with what he's working on, it's more the idea of a pressurized vacuum, and the idea of much like the crystal I hold in my hand. If I was to wrap copper around that and strike it with a hammer, you could see a voltaic charge move on a meter.
Exactly. You're still moving, what amounts to electrons and particles to create a current, to create a flow of electrical magnetism or whatever you're trying to accomplish. And that's going to happen. The 0 point and getting down to getting something from nothing is something that in science makes sense for some reason, but in the general populace, it gets played on a lot, because that does sound like the Big Bang Theory, where this was created from nothing, but it wasn't really nothing, but it does sound like it might as well be. Trying to take that information, digest it, and then try to regurgitate it, so to speak. Sorry for the visual if you had that.
That's okay.
And to regurgitate that to people so that they can accept it in a way that makes sense to them and ourselves, because I'm not, a full-time physicist or anything like that. But that's a skill. And I applaud you for doing it, because you do it all the time. I have to do it, and anyone else that does it by taking complex information and converting it to something someone can understand, aka Carl Sagan style, Neil deGrasse Tyson style, Stephen Hawking style, so forth. There's so many people that do it. That's what gets everyone's minds wondering, and that's where these sci-fi writers, a lot of them, they get their science from real science and apply it to whatever it is they're doing. Whether it's a story or a movie or whatever, and then you get really cool stuff out of it. Case in point would be in Interstellar. I mean, the graphics and the things that they did in there were amazingly accurate, that when we finally took a picture of an actual black hole, guess what it looked like? just like what we saw in Interstellar. So it's kind of amazing that's come along so far. It's not like the 40s, 50s, and 60s when you watch a show and it was pretty hokey, but as we watch it today, but back then that was cutting edge technology. Now we blur the lines between reality and what is technology and what is sci-fi. I mean, they're almost synonymous.
And it sounds corny, but it's absolutely true. It's so entirely real. Like I do pretty well live my life still in a news cycle, Mike. Like I post regularly news articles, things like that. I am constantly getting alerts from my RSS feeds about new stuff coming out, things like that. And I thank the good Lord every day for the elective speed reading class that I took in high school. I don't think it's ever come so useful. But at the same token, not everybody lives their life in that kind of news cycle. Most people live their life on the news cycle that is fed to them either via radio during drive time or via TV before and after drive time or before they go to bed. Yeah. And most of these stories, like, unfortunately, as I say on the show regularly, science is unsexy. To most people, to the average person, to the byline of the news, science is unsexy. To me, it's sexy as hell to hear somebody say, like, when we come back from break, making matter out of light. We'll talk about that right after this. That to me is a sexy, like, whoa, hold the brakes. Like, I just dropped a dish in the sink. To the average person, that is not an exciting headline. It's not like, like major accident on the freeway leads to shooting. It's not excitement driven in that kind of way. And to the average person trying to break down why making matter out of light is even a thing or important.
Yeah. And the magic to it, and I like to use the word magic interchangeably in some ways, because for some, a lot of science is magic. But when you look at a individual, when you see that spark, that wait a second, did he just say blah blah blah, and they start thinking, that's the key. Once someone hears something and it makes them think, either way, it doesn't matter which way they think, whether they believe it or not, don't believe it. It's not even a question of that. It's a question of, does this spark something in you? And just like you're sure you're going to have with the Bonnie Betta Hill case. That was the first UFO case I ever was interested in. The very first one. And I can't wait. I want to be on that show.
Well, you know, and not only that, but it's one that it was one of the very first fully reported and documented cases of abduction. And that's something that we brought up not only in the episode with Kathleen Martin, but with Earl Grey after, is that yes, in 1966, you know, MK Ultra was in full swing, absolutely. But it's not like because I mean the church committee hearings didn't happen until the 70s, you know, right. That's one of the only lawsuits to ever come out against the federal government and be won, aside from, you know, the good families just south of Area 51 that dealt with all the poisonings from the burnings. When they finally had to go, okay, you're right, Area 51 exists. Sorry about the poison. You know, sorry about the burn off of toxic materials.
And they try to give Lazar credit for, you know, putting Area 51 on the map. I mean, yeah, obviously his story did a lot too, but that wasn't the catalyst that made that happen. But yeah, I would not be able to move forward in my life without having a stream of new things to keep me going to want that next thing that's going to incorporate. Wow, the new Adobe Photoshop is coming out with a incredible AI interface. So you hear about AI and stuff, and then you think, well, how is this going to apply to me on a day-to-day basis? And that's what most people do. I mean, they see it with like TikTok videos, and a new filter makes you look instantly like a spider or whatever you want. Yeah. You know, and then the behind-the-scenes things that you and I think about sometimes is like, what are the implications here? You know, I don't mean to go off on an AI story, but
you have to think about the implications. I mean, heck, we had you on years ago, back in our old incarnation, talking about Niantic Soft and the Pokemon Go stuff, and the idea of like, whoa, wait a minute, Niantic Soft fully got their first round of funding, and like half of their first round of funding from In-Q-Tel, the financial arm of the CIA that finds all kinds of interesting projects, which interestingly enough, when you approach their booth at CES, they don't have anybody there to speak to the media.
No, they don't. And there's a reason
neither
for
did the
that.
Department of Energy, neither did... Man, I wanted to talk to somebody on camera, and none of them wanted to be on camera at all, Mike.
Even when they recruit, it gets silly. Because we did a recruiting thing near Baltimore, and of course, you know, that's the hotbed of everybody. And while there, they were putting, you know, it's like recruiters. You have military recruiters, and your mind thinks that. But when you're talking about the intelligence community doing recruiting, it's a whole nother. It's not necessarily a whole new level, but it's a whole new field of everything. And I got interested in how the CIA was proposing to people to come work for them, and it was almost like a competition between NSA and National Reconnaissance Office and CIA. Everybody vying for that same person who's standing in front of you that has the attributes of what you want, and that's what's happening right now. Is as people, they gather their news, they listen to shows like yours or mine, and they go, wow, this has sparked me to want to do that, you know, in any capacity. It truly is astounding. But anyway, sorry to get us way off track on there.
No, not off track at all, because that is once again how even how you got to where you are, you know, me studying things like this in this kind of way. Like, we get there because of the trails of interest that we follow. And
absolutely.
Yes, unfortunately, most people are not really interested in fully high-tech science when it comes to, like, yes, they made matter out of collisions of light 2 years ago. You know, the fact that, yes, it took a lot of energy in a lab, but a laboratory technician in Japan was able to shift the atomic structure of lead to gold. Like he was actively able to get that one electron shift and make true alchemy happen.
Alchemy has been reborn.
it took a lot of power to do it, like more power and chemical than the worth of gold that was made.
Right.
But it's a step. It's a step.
It is.
And when you're talking about, especially the use, you mentioned AI. Oddly enough, when it comes to big, huge AI, things like that, when it comes to AI in military use, when it comes to AI for facial digital tracking, things like that, stuff that can fully deprecate your personal or civil rights, not about it one bit. When it comes to creative AI, and Adobe just had to come out and make a statement like, no, we do not own your artwork. What we own is your prompts.
Yeah.
Is your artwork being fed into the database to give other people similar results for similar prompts? Sure. Absolutely. And you have to kind of expect that. But even years ago, whenever we had you on talking about the Adobe software, and this was way before the days of deep fake like we have it now. But in 2014 or so, Mike, when the Adobe software came out, where as long as you had 20 minutes of somebody's voice, you could make them say whatever you wanted.
Yeah,
you could literally type anything you wanted, and if the AI heard 20 minutes, you could feed them 20 minutes of Chris Jordan speaking into this microphone, and I would never have to be behind this microphone again. It would have my inflection. It would have my tone. It would have everything. And it's pretty remarkable. It's pretty interesting. It's how James Earl Jones was just able to sell the rights to his voice in perpetuity. He'll be voicing over CNN commercials for the next 80 years.
And Vader stuff.
Yeah. Like they could have the voice of Darth Vader over a comm unit into infinity. But when that happened,
bringing back actors that have passed on and all kinds of things. It brings in some other legal / ethical questions and stuff naturally. But I always look at it from the glasses half full kind of thing. It's like, okay, how is this going to benefit us, and what can we do to take the most benefits out of it without losing who we are?
Yeah.
That's the key thing, is you don't want to lose who you are. You don't want to come to work and flip a switch and say, I don't feel like doing the show tonight. I'll just let the AI do it. I don't see you doing that.
No. However, will I use a scientific AI like what I have purchased right to use? Absolutely. Yeah. Which is a great AI. I can take research papers. I can take like 8-9 research papers on the same topic, feed it into this AI and say, please give me a 500-word, 8 bullet point summary of these research papers. And within a couple minutes, it gives it to me.
It's amazing.
That's pretty incredible. When you're talking about and that's what AI excels at. That's what I'm about, is the fact of, yes, and I'll pull it up on screen here in just a minute. This last year at CES, it happened while CES was going on, and I kept talking about it. But the Microsoft AI in one day, and I may have the number wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, it was in one day, found 10,000 organic replacements for lithium. Yeah. Organic. We do not have to mine the earth. We don't have to strip mine. We don't have to use slave labor. We don't have to worry about it exploding when it meets air. It's interesting. It's interesting. I'll find that real quick. But
that is cool. Yeah. And then of course every day I see Elon Musk saying, if there's an industry you want to get into, it's lithium. He's like, we need batteries, and we're going to need to get a lot of these, and everyone else is going to need a lot of these. So get in the refining of lithium industry, and you'll be just fine. And it's kind of neat. It's kind of neat and weird at the same time to see a CEO like him come out and try to, create a whole nother industry, or to not create it, but to make it better. So it's better for everybody, not just him. He opens up his patents and gives them, out and stuff like that. And I applaud that. He's like the Tesla / Keanu Reeves, / something else with that bad boy side to him too. It's like, okay, I can deal with that.
It's and that's just it. We are living beautifully in another age of visionary inventors, and not just visionary inventors, but visionary industrialists, people who see a process in a different light. Like even myself, whenever I do my job, I akin it very much to Henry Ford. And I always say, it worked. It was the first time that the assembly line as we know it was ever put into function, and it worked. And it always worked.
Yes,
and no matter what people have added to it or subtracted to it, the heart of it is the same. It is. Because if you change that, then it changes the inner workings of that cog of the machine, and things go awry. So having that kind of vision to see a different way to do something entirely is quite literally the mother of invention, and where we get high technology from, things like that. And yes, you do have to wonder when it comes to things like the Space Force, when it comes to things like weaponry in space, that kind of lasers in space. Like, we know that China put up spy hunting satellites, hunting spy satellites, rather, I should say. All of a few
and they
years
created
ago.
a huge mess too.
yeah. It's just now wherever they've hit, it's just floating debris fields in space.
Yeah, and we've done that ourselves, but we're the ones that generally, at the time especially, were having the bigger issues if someone else did it. But China just blatantly just didn't care and did their thing. China is going to be a huge problem for us as far as because we don't have a working relationship with China's space program, and that was by design, because we felt like they just want to steal our technology, which has a lot of truth to it. I've been to China about 25 times, and I can sit here and no one can argue with me about whether or not I've had my own designs ripped off in China, or whether or not that seems to be a predominant problem there, and it is. But then you have some shining lights that come through. Companies like DJI, which is about to be banned in the United States, which I don't agree with at all, because of the new defense budget that's coming out. It's going to actually ban DJI. Not with that at all. But you see these beacons of light that come out of China that are like, wow, DJI, you've got Fox that makes all the Apple phones, and you have all these companies that that pop up with some really cool stuff, and a price that everybody can afford. That's what makes it really cool. So I see them as someone that we need to start fostering a better relationship with. Even though we have our own differences and stuff, there is some ground to be gained and a lot of benefits down the road, because the path we're on right now, I don't see that being super successful 20 years from now. It's going to become more adversarial.
Yeah,
but it is what it is. We spy on them, they spy on us, and we have fun.
And that's just it. Like the Cold War as we knew it, as I knew it growing up, Mike, was not about China necessarily.
Right.
Now it's very different. It's very different. It's interesting to see once again the realm of things going on, the huge, massive growth. The Robert Salas put out the book many years ago, Rise of the Red Dragon, talking about the rise of the secret Chinese Space Force, things like that. And the one that, just released another unknown mystery object. Third mission, second object released. And like you said, looks oddly enough very much like our unmanned space plane.
Yeah, true.
But
some of the designs, even so, they did well. It's just, remember when the Russian their shuttle looked amazingly like ours, and we thought that they had received a lot of our designs, which they did. But the actual shuttle itself was amazing. Their shuttle was pretty amazing. I mean, it could take off like a jet.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know that. But we won that race as well. And with the China situation, there's another new country that's up and coming in the race to space, or whatever you want to call it, which is not really much of a space race anymore. It's just a bunch of people trying to do stuff. India, Pakistan, Iran, even North Korea. Yeah, so there's a lot of things going on that Japan, yeah, especially Japan. Actually, they do
both
quite
Japan
well.
And China and India have all joined the Lunar Club.
And none of them really like each other.
Yeah.
So it becomes an issue. Japan likes India but hates China. China likes India but hates Japan. It's just I don't see a lot of that working. It's not like us in the European Space Agency that we get together and we do some work together. I was at Kennedy Space Center a few weeks back when they were bringing in several designs from ESA that were coming over here. And it was kind of weird to see a couple of names that I knew was associated with several rockets that were, French design. And they were here, and that didn't make sense to me. And then come to find out that a lot of people are moving their stuff over to SpaceX for launch. So, all right.
Well, and there's been all kinds of interesting things in the world of space news, that kind of stuff. When it comes to the Boeing Starliner finally getting off the ground, when it comes to the Chinese reaching the far side of the moon with their landing, Japan landing, it's been really interesting.
And then we land with a broken leg.
Yeah,
with our first commercial.
Well, and when it comes to, once again, even because we even have a working relationship with the Russians still.
Oh yeah,
in space.
Yeah, and we wrote into that agreement whenever this started that there will be times that will be tested, but the scientific community needs to be its own community and should not be a part of the geopolitical realm of whatever. That should be a way for us to get back together. It's like some sort of, their word solidarity. And so I still see that. I still like it. It's like, I like the Russian people. They're great people. I don't care for some of the things the government does. Same thing with China.
Most Russians don't care for what the government does.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like when you go to China. The first time I went to China, I had this whole thing in my mind about how it was going to be, and all the people would be oppressed, and they're like working in all these conditions, and it was nothing like that at all. Not even close. I mean, I was so far taken aback. It took me a day to just readjust, because I was about to go to a motorcycle manufacturer and work with them on a design, and I was going to be like their keynote speaker at their year-long get-together, or year-time get-together. And it was an honor. And at the same time, I had just wrote this thing before I went to China, and I had to rewrite the whole thing because everything I knew about China was wrong.
Wow.
Totally wrong.
Wow.
But yeah. And speaking of that, they've got this object up there that looks amazingly like our space plane that the Air Force or Space Force uses.
Yeah.
Like their F-37. And, they keep putting these objects out from the ship, and we have a lot of people that watch this and track it and stuff like this. And they're trying to figure out, okay, what object did they just put in space? Was it trash? Are they about to land, or is it emitting signals? And believe it or not, a lot of these people that are actually able to do this are people just like our listeners. Yeah. They are everyday people, not necessarily working at some big lab, some huge company somewhere.
Astronomers.
Yes. And they're able to determine the signals coming from these objects that are being put out by this super secret, space plane that China has. And it's amazing. That aspect of all of this is so neat to see a normal everyday person, come home from work, get on their computer and their antenna and go, oh, they just released this. Oh, here's the signal that it's putting out. Yeah. So this must be a blah, blah, blah. And they're right.
Well,
so, I love that.
There are apps out there that will track the ISS so you can watch it go over your house. There's apps out there, like I use Stellarium. That's a very popular one. It'll show you the satellites that are over your head and what their numbers are. If there's a number on it.
Yeah, I think
it'll also show you satellites without a number.
Yeah, well, they did just assign a number to the object that was released by the
Chinese.
I almost said Russian space plane, by the Chinese space plane. Yeah. So I call it Shenlong, which is Chinese is divine dragon or something like that. So when you see another country basically mimic some of the things you've done before, there's a lot of thoughts that a lot of people have. Oh, they're never going to catch up to us because we're so far ahead. But in so many aspects, that some of these other countries are ahead of us in certain areas, and one of those areas is going to be brought to the forefront here pretty quick.
Well, and very much so, because I remember up around New Year, more specifically Chinese New Year, I had you on and said, watch the news cycle, watch the news cycles, watch China, watch Taiwan. There will be something a brewing this year from China. Big chested, big bully, hey, this is our corner kind of stuff, because this is the year of the dragon, which is hugely important to them. And once again, name of that cool little space plane is Dragon. So it's, pay attention to that little thing. It's going to be doing a lot this year. It's going to be doing quite a bit, and ours does quite a bit. And it makes all kinds of records. I mean, we didn't even hear about it till it broke a record when it first landed. It landed with fanfare of, after a record 260 days in orbit. It's like, this thing's been over our head for almost a year, and we never heard about launch. We never heard about anything.
I think one of them, it was up for over 2 years now, or maybe even 3 years. Just a ridiculous
you may be correct. I think it was a 2-year mission. Because and that's when Space Force really began. There was no secret about it. Like, they announced it as the new military space plane. Yeah.
And I'm glad they're being, and not necessarily, it's not necessarily like being transparent, but it you don't have to shroud. Like, I was at the NRO launch, National Reconnaissance Office launch of NRO 55L at Vandenberg, and I was a special guest, and I come in and they take me down this whole bunker thing and whatever, and I did not realize how close we were to that launch until it went off. It was foggy and whatever, and then that launch went off. It was a holy crap. We were right on it.
Yeah.
But when you look at it from a standpoint of all of the technology that goes together and how much shrouding that in so much secrecy really does nothing. Because people want to watch the launch. It's just like you watch a Falcon 9 take off with a National Reconnaissance Office launch, and they have to cut the feed after a certain point. But there's really not a whole lot you have to do. And but NASA does get some benefits out of that, because I think I told you this story before a few years back, that NASA was gifted 2 Hubble space telescopes by the National Reconnaissance Office for free. and they are now utilizing both of them. I think now they were going to do one and then use the other for parts, but then now they have both. So pretty interesting thing. Why build one when you can build three?
Well, and you know, proof to the fact of those technologies are so close together, so integrally intertwined. The idea of militaria and science. It's
and
really,
so sometimes
really
that's a good thing. Sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes not so good, because the inside story to what happened with the Hubble, when the Hubble could not see, remember they had to send up a bunch of a package to basically correct the eye issues for because
corrective lens.
Yeah, and Hubble and they leaked it. It kind of came out in a weird way as to what had happened. But you'll never see an official story about what I'm about to tell you. But Hubble was nearsighted, and it was nearsighted for a reason. And if you take a look at the Hubble telescope and who made it and what else they make, and look at a KH, which is there's several names for it, but Kenan and also called Kristall, that satellite series, they're identical. It's the same thing. So all of that money that went into making Hubble was for science packages that Hubble, was going to be totally unique, something separate. But the design of it was the same, so they looked the same. And what happened was with the lens that they grounded improperly. Everybody remembers them saying that, they ground the lens improperly. Well, the lenses ground properly. They just used basically pretty much the same one they used on the KA series, and it's designed to look at an object 160 to 400 and some odd miles away, not an object that's light years away. So, but that's your story in a nutshell, and it makes sense, But when those first images came through, oh my gosh, they were beautiful.
Well, yeah, and that's just it. We did a lot of space-based observation of Earth. We've done a lot of surveillance of our planet. Even right now, there are private satellites that you can go rent time on, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Have areas scanned, that kind of stuff. Down to the millimeter almost. It's incredible. The at least to a half inch to an inch or so on most civilian stuff. It's
and I'm gonna plug you. I've got to plug you right now, because you have done something that I rarely ever see in anyone in my life. You took to a hobby, the astrophotography, in such a way that I am astounded at the amazing images that you are actually achieving. And I am thoroughly impressed with it. And I am absolutely happy as hell that you're doing great. I mean, I could not have seen someone just take to something so well and just pick up the concept, everything, boom, 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 and you took off like wildfire. And I'm looking at these images, I'm going, wow, these are way better than anything I've ever done. And I'm so happy for you, man. It's just they are really stunning. So everybody listen to this if you haven't seen them.
Thank you so much. I'm actively looking at selling some soon, so we'll see what goes out for sale. But you were actively the inspiration for a lot of that. I had brand new cameras and a great place to view a lunar eclipse, and went out and shot some video and was like, wow, like I could get into just shooting video of the moon. And you were like, hey, that's a pretty nice lens. You should just take that and point it at Orion and leave the exposure on for just about 2-3 seconds and let me know what you see. And that changed it. It was the tech rabbit hole for me at that point. It's become most of my moon pictures, things like that. Like I give myself exactly about 5 minutes to shoot the moon. And out of that 5-minute session, out of 100, 200 pictures, I'll keep 5 to edit with, It's a challenge. It's great. It's super fun.
And people will be amazed. People will be amazed at what they can do with the cameras they already have. You don't have to go out and buy a $5,000, $10,000 camera. Nope. I took someone's cell phone, and while we were out camping, and I laid it on the top of my truck, and I took a long exposure photo with it, and I left the image in their gallery, and they went looking. I said, "Hey, didn't you take a picture of that squirrel earlier or something like that?" And they're scrolling through the gallery, and they see this incredible image of the Milky Way galaxy, and the mountains and stuff. It's like, this looks like here. And I said, "Wow, that's amazing. You took that?" And they're like, "No." I said, "This is like out of a magazine or something." I said, "No." I said, "Your camera took that picture just a few minutes ago. I just did it because we're talking about it." And so that it can be you. You can be doing that. And they were astounded that it was that simple with their own cameras. That was Apple, so I didn't know how to use it that well. But yeah, dude, you have absolutely, amazed me. Your images. I think anyone listening should, you need to have a special directory. You just do it. You have a super special directory on your page saying, "Hey, here's one of my hobbies. Boom, here's some images," and everyone listening to this will be amazed. It's absolutely really stunning.
It's fun stuff, and there's things out there now, like one of them, that secret weapon I'm actually using in my arsenal, man, Sea Star, and it is not crazy expensive. It's a tiny little, about 3-pound smart scope.
Mm-hmm.
Attaches via app to your tablet or your phone, and quite literally does 3/4 of the work for you. Like, I have big telescopes, I have tracking mounts, things like that, but on occasion you'll have to, like, hey, re-level your Sea Star, make sure it's level. Recalibrate the compass by picking it up and turning it around till the app says stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just go to the moon, and it just follows the moon.
You can use your Sea Star to track planes.
Yep.
You can use it to track all kinds of different things.
Yes, you can.
Once you center that object in there, its job is to keep that dot in the center.
Yeah.
And that's why when you have a spotting scope. Yeah, I used to have a spotting scope on the side of my actual scope. It was weird because my spotting scope was as big as a lot of people's actual scope. But once I got that, I had this device that was a CCD charge couple device that plugged into the eyepiece, and you literally would take the North Star and put it in there, and it would stay tracked to that as far as stability was concerned. Which is weird because the North Star does wobble a little bit in its orbit, but you don't really notice it in your exposures. But that's when I took my first image of Saturn, and I was amazed. I was like, wow, there's no way they must have just pulled this from the internet somehow. That was even before the internet was here. But,
it's
absolutely fun.
Well, and that's just it. When it comes to tech, when it comes to tech in the world that we live in, it is a beautiful new world, man. We used to not have things like this. It used to be prohibitively expensive. These kind of things, AI tracking, that kind of stuff, AI stabilization, that is what makes these tiny little scopes possible. Up on screen right now, I've actively got the video of the eclipse that I took with that tiny little scope.
I remember seeing it.
And I got it specifically for that because I wanted to make sure it was tracked properly. And it did a great job, and it's pretty remarkable what's out there. And yes, some of these things can be scary. Fire was scary when Prometheus first brought it down. It's still kind of scary if you aren't careful with it. We need to get checks in place. We need to get balances in place. We need to be proactive about things. But the last thing in the world that we need to do, Mike, is prohibit science. The last thing that we need to do in the world is slow down the knowledge train. That to me is a backward concept and so dangerously close to we don't need this book.
Well, please come help me with the flat earthers that I'm dealing with right now on TikTok that want to have me on one of their shows. So, yeah, you can come over and join me for that.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, I'll join you for that show.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun. I think I might even do a simulcast on my own show or whatever. But
I do have a flat Earth hypothesis, and granted, that flat Earth hypothesis comes right along with the idea of why we have time zones. Because yes, the Earth is flat; it's like a big turntable, you know. And just like any turntable, where if you've got a quarter sitting on the edge and it's on the edge while it's turning, it's perfectly fine. As soon as you stop it, the quarter is going to fly off, you know? So we've got to keep that platter moving 24/7. So we can't have everybody on Earth asleep at the same time. So that's why the time zones are there, is to make sure that there's always a population of people on Earth up and moving and walking and keeping that turntable going. Otherwise, if it stops, we all fly off. That's
true. That would be a very bad thing.
That's my flat Earth hypothesis.
I'm very impressed. Take back everything I said about your astrophotography. Your astrophotography is crap.
My astrophotography is crap. Your astrophotography is a lie, sir.
Yeah. Your gravity doesn't exist, man. Come on, you know that.
You know, it's fully interesting to me, though, even to hypothesize such things, because to hypothesize, even you know, do we need oxygen because we're only vibration, just things like that. That is the job of science, though, is to. You're allowed to hypothesize any wild thing. It's through experiment and poking and prodding that we prove the hypothesis to be a theory. You know, and even then, it's only a theory.
And the world around us through observation and stuff like this doesn't have to end at just the observation point. Anyone can actually do some of these experiments that were done 2,000 years ago to determine the size of the Earth. You know, our relative position, and that are we moving around the sun moving around us? What's going on here? And anyone can do these things. It's really not that hard to do. But for some reason, there's a certain select group of people out there that just I don't know. It's always been a thing in the back of my mind that I have to keep scratching that thing every now and then and go, well, let me go see how the flat Earth is doing. I dove back into it here about 2 months ago, and I'm like, oh no,
how's that working out for you?
Oh my God, I don't know. I had to bring back my Stephen Hawking video with the epic rant against flat Earth versus Stephen Hawking, and and one of the guys played it on his show because I suckered him into it, and says, Stephen Hawking came out with a new video, that was made before he died, and that talks about flat Earth, and they're like, really? Well, I've got to see this, and they're ready to jump on it because they know he's not going to be nice. And they started playing the video that I produced, and it's Stephen Hawking cussing up a storm. I mean, it's just it's him as if I was thinking outside of the box as how would he really want to respond to people that still believe this stuff? And so I did all the words and stuff, and I didn't contact him. I contacted Tyson. Dr. Tyson, and I said, I don't know how to get a hold of Stephen Hawking. I have no clue, and I'm scared that I'm going to screw up. So can you maybe help me find out if this is okay? Yeah. So he did it. I came back, and I got a thumbs up, and I was good to go. And that video is fun.
Well, Mike, as always, man, thanks for a great conversation. It's always awesome just kind of cracking the nut open of technology with you, because there is so much out there and such a panoply of information and concepts that are burgeoning on every day, and it's remarkable to see it, and it's mind-boggling, mind-numbing to try to keep up with sometimes. So
absolutely,
thanks for always being there to break it open for people. Let everybody know where they can go to follow you, follow the work of 5x5 News, all that kind of good stuff, bud.
Well, the easiest ways would probably go to YouTube on some of the more instructional / documentary type investigations that they do. you get that information there. You'll be more interactive with me probably on X and possibly even on TikTok. On TikTok, I'm going to start doing some lives here pretty soon. Cool. And because I'm at that 10,000 mark now, so I can actually do it. Yeah, yay! I'm somebody. I'm David Johnson. Get away from these cans. But yeah, so that's the plan. So TikTok and YouTube and X, I'm going to be there under the moniker of 5x5 News.
Awesome, Mike. As always, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate the time and the brain power breaking these things apart. Always a pleasure, man. I'll be in touch with links, all that kind of good stuff as always.
All right, buddy. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Take care, man.
You
be
too.
Safe out there.
Always.
Man, always a great conversation with Mike Turber. Just such a keen mind and such a unique insight to this world of technology, the world of military technology, contracting technology, stuff like that. When we come back from this quick break, we will be joined by our good friend and guest, cryptozoology researcher, Ryan Edwards. We will be talking about para-community unity, the idea of bringing not just paranormal communities together, but research communities together. Weekend warrior researchers with scientists. How do we get them to understand each other's importance as well as understand the language that each other speak, why they speak it, how they speak it? So when we come back from this break, we will be joined by Ryan Edwards right after this, everybody. The Curious Realm Podcast is your source for the latest and greatest news and events in the world of the paranormal, esoteric, and forbidden knowledge. And there's no better way to spark the conversation than with items from the Curious Realm store. Choose from fan favorites like hoodies, mouse pads, coffee mugs, and more. Buy books and items from your favorite Curious Realm guests. Get your hands on the latest gear for paranormal investigations and experiments we discuss on the show. Open your web browser and stop on by the Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to buy the latest Curious Realm wear and out-of-this-world gifts for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back from that quick commercial break. Thank you so much to our sponsors, especially WebWorks Wireless. WebWorks Wireless is your home for high-speed internet for all folks. No data limit, no throttling, no credit check, no contracts. We at Curious Realm have been using WebWorks Wireless and their wireless routers since the beginning of Curious Realm. They are the source of our website live streams every week. I've been benchmarking their stuff across the country since we started, and I have had zero drops. I have had zero issues. We have had zero problems with their feeds with Curious Realm. If you are looking for data coverage for your camp, for your mobile system, for anything, your church, what have you, feel free to stop on by webworkswireless.com, folks. Let them know that we sent you. They are amazing and will work with anybody. Once again, that website is webworkswireless.com. Our guest in this segment is the amazing Ryan Edwards. He's the author of Sasquatch, a prehistory of a living legend. He is also the author of another book on cryptids. He is also one of the founders of the feast over at Symposium of the Strange. That is partially what we will be talking about tonight, is that amazing upcoming event here in San Antonio, coming to you from Ryan, as well as Curious Events and our friend Ken Gerhardt, as well as Rod Nichols of Bexar County Bigfoot. So welcome back to the show, Ryan Edwards. How are you doing, bud?
Doing good, guys. It's always good to be here, Chris.
Always great. And you are on the heels of coming back from Alabama Bigfoot Conference. How did that go?
It went well. It was a great time over there. I wasn't one of the speakers, but I was one of the vendors, was able to sell my books. Other than the trip, it was good. I was like, that's a 15-hour drive for me, but thank God I didn't drive by myself. Our good friend Jason McLean drove me most of the way there. And I'm like, dude, thank you. I appreciate that. Like, I don't know if I could drive 15 hours straight myself.
It is a beastly trip. That is for certain, man. I used to make that every year as a kid from Houston to Alabama to go see family, and typically stayed out there for a couple weeks, things like that during the summer. But yeah, it was always a handoff road trip where Papa would start, somebody else would take over, then he'd finish off. Like, we slept in the car. It's a banger, man. It's a long one.
Yeah, like I got back home like it was like Sunday at like midnight, and I was like, I drove through Austin at like I was driving through Austin like 11 o'clock, and I'm like, okay, I need to make sure I don't fall asleep on the way home.
Well, I was kind of up against the same thing coming back from as you were coming back. I was coming back from 24 days on the road. I just happened to get to sleep on a plane with a couple of drinks in me as that happened. So I'm glad I didn't have to make the physical road trip as you did. But I'm also glad that you got to go and experience such a great conference. It's like their third year doing that. You know, there was a good turnout. So good for you guys. It's fantastic. Yeah,
it was great to see. We had a good turnout. We had some great speakers. Bart Nunley, Daryl Denton, Martin Groves. Great hearing from researchers, especially researchers from that and general area. Like they do a lot of their research up in the LBL, Kentucky, Tennessee. Yeah. And it was great hearing from like people not just from around the country, but like from the area that know what's going on, what sightings happen. And especially one big thing from it, it was a lot of people's first time going to a conference.
Oh, that's great.
I would question, like, hey guys, like, are you guys local? Like, guys coming in? I met people coming from like even North Carolina. Wow. First time ever coming to a conference, and people were like, "Oh, I'm from Annisburg, Alabama. I want to come in and see how it is." And I love seeing that because it's bringing in those new faces, those new people into these conferences, and even some of them were like, "Wait, when did these happen?" And it's like, well, there's a Florida Bigfoot conference, there's a Texas Bigfoot conference in Jefferson, Texas. There's a Southeast Texas Bigfoot conference. There's this, that, Smoky Mountain. And they're like, wait, this is a thing? And I'm like, yeah, if people don't realize it's a thing of Bigfoot and paranormal conferences even in the first place. Yeah.
Like hit the Northeast, there's a good 3 or 4 that happen every year. There's a couple that happen in the Northwest. You know, they're pretty well all over the country now. And you could smooth probably 1 month out of each month out of the year. Make your way to a cryptid or Bigfoot conference somewhere in the country.
Yeah. Like, especially here in the South, like, of course, we have Falk, we have the Jefferson Bigfoot Conference. Even if you go far east of it, you have, like, the Mothman Festival, you have the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference. Yeah. And I think that was one thing I encountered when I first got into this field a couple years back. I was like, okay, I'm in here. What do I do now? Like, I was like, okay, there's this conference. I literally had a list of like different things throughout the year. I'm like, okay, I need to go to this one. Yeah. And even like my friend Jason McLean, Jason was like, you're pretty much almost on the circuit now. And I'm like, what do you mean on the circuit? He's like, you're going to a lot of these conferences. I'm like, oh no, I'm one of you guys.
I'm one of you.
That scares me.
Well, and you know, it always, the cryptid conferences specifically, Ryan, like I'm a big pop culture guy. I went to Comic-Cons. I speak at Houston Comic-Con typically every year. And this year I didn't get to make it out there because of my 24 days on the road. But yeah, the cryptid conferences more than anything, I think really bring about that true community sense, where people are sitting, swapping stories, that kind of stuff. I go to a lot of conferences every year, like the International Remote Viewing Association, International Association for Near-Death Studies, MUFON Symposium, all kinds of things. And I'm involved in all kinds of communities, but above all of them, the cryptid and specifically Bigfoot community, where they go out and they have just like campouts where it's not even a conference, like groups of them just get together by like 100 or so and just go out and have a camp out, that kind of stuff. It's really, really cool and very community oriented. I would say out of any of them, probably the most family friendly of the conferences would be the Bigfoot conferences, where like you could feel comfortable bringing your 8-9-year-old kid. They aren't going to be freaked out by anything they see. There ain't going to be some horrible, not horrible, but some epic demon poster or demon book or somebody speaking about things that are creepy and scary and, that kind of stuff. So,
and that's like one thing that like I over the years have found really interesting with this field is that sense of community. Like I think it was my second year going to Jefferson a couple years back, and like the vendors are like, "Oh hey Ryan," I'm like, "You guys remember who I am?" They're like, "Yeah, like you were here last year," and I'm like, "Oh wow!" Like people recognizing you, people knowing who you are, people talking to you. That's one big thing I noticed. I haven't gone to many paranormal conferences. I went to the Texas. They're here down here in Church, Texas, earlier this year. But I've been to like Paranormal Roundtable, Texas Bigfoot Conference, and in my opinion, you also see the difference of demographics too. You see different age ranges of people, different types of people going to the conferences, and that's like when like my little analytical brain kicks in. Like, okay, like I wish someone would put down the numbers and analytics of like paranormal conferences. Like, okay,
don't get me started. Yeah, I'll have an AI created and I'll call those numbers.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because whenever you go to specifically the Bigfoot and quite a few of the UFO community conferences, you do get an older crowd.
Yes.
Than you tend to get at the paranormal conferences. The paranormal conferences and quite a few of the cryptid conferences, you tend to find a bit more of the pop culture age, the mid to late 20s, mid 30s range. When you get to the hardcore, when you get to the hardcore true Bigfoot conferences, things like that have been around, much like Jefferson, that's been around for 20 something years almost. One of the longest running in the country, actually. You get a lot of the older folk.
Yeah, and that's like one big thing. Like we bring up 100 times. Like when I go to Jefferson, I'm like, I'm always the youngest person here. I hate this. And it's like, but when you go to like a paranormal conference, it's like, hey, people my age.
Hey, all right.
And it's like, and that's like one big thing with the cryptid community, especially like Bigfoot community, is bringing in that new fresh blood, the new like generations. Like when I go to a conference and I see everyone's in their 40s or 50s, I'm like, okay, I love it. This is great, but how can we change that?
Well,
how can we bring in that new next generation?
Yeah, and one of those, like even as somebody who builds websites and does SEO, Ryan, like a lot of the reason behind SEO and that kind of work isn't just discoverability, but it's also metrics and understanding like, okay, within this niche audience, how many males, how many females do I have visiting my website? What's their average education level? Because if you've got like males between this age and with with an average high school education, maybe drop the $12 words in your articles that you write, things like that. So you really get to curate content, and even attending the different festivals like you're attending with the quite literal panoply of books you have coming out. You're working on number 3 right now, and number 2 just came out. I know you've got other work in the shoot. So and when you're doing things with that kind of speed production wise, you really can kind of see like, okay, well, if I'm attending 2 or 3 of these conferences per year, maybe I should write a book specifically for that audience. You know, like instance, so that there's different merch whenever I go to different shows available.
Yeah. Like, for instance, I was thinking about attending, like, the Mothman Festival this year. I'm like, if I go to the Mothman Festival, all my stuff is Bigfoot. I don't know how well that's going to sell. But it's like, I can always bring up, like, okay, flying humanoids, I guess, Mothman to an extent. Yeah. But, like, you wouldn't go to a Loch Ness Monster Festival if you have nothing but Bigfoot merch. It's like that type of stuff. Yeah, yeah. You have that speciality when it comes to conferences. And that's like kind of my issue with me is that I have I kind of specialize in Sasquatch, but I have a generalist cryptozoological ideas. Yeah. Like, I bring up, like, cryptids that people have never heard of. And, like, talking at this conference, that was one big thing is people like, well, Bigfoot's just this and that. And it's like, no, well, here's the science, here's this, here's this cryptid, here's this research. Stuff people have never heard of. And it's kind of, I guess to an extent, I kind of lose myself in it because I'm in the field. I'm in cryptozoology. I kind of lose the fact that people don't know about this stuff because everyone around me knows about the Passagimman film, know about the Cripplefoot footprints, know about this Dogman sighting, know about Goatman. But when you go to a conference, people are like, wait, what's a Dogman? You're like, okay, let me get you started on this. Yeah. No. Last year, whenever I went and provided AV for the Dogman encrypted conference for Paranormal Roundtable, my AV tech, who I brought with me, who's a very good friend, we spent the night before, and I was like, okay, as opposed to some of the other things you've come to with me, as opposed to some of the other things that you have seen me cover on the show, because he was like, oh, I've seen that guy. Yeah, he's on your show. I've seen that guy. Oh, hey, Ryan Edwards. I've seen him. He's on your show. You know, stuff like that. And I was like, the Dogman community is a little bit different. You know, this is gonna be a different experience for you. It's a different facet of the dodecahedron that is. That's kind of how I compare the paranormal world. It's like a Dungeons and Dragons die, you know. And that's it's like there's so many sides to this too. Yeah, like even with the Bigfoot community, like for instance, at the Alabama Bigfoot conference, you have people that believe it's flesh and blood, and you have people that believe, like speaking with Barton Nunley. Like I love Barton, like he's a good friend of mine. Even me and him don't view everything the same, but we still have those discussions. Like, okay, where is this perspective coming from? Where is my perspective coming from? Because that's one thing in this field is that communication, even with people that don't agree with you. Well, like, please go ahead. Like if you get to that point of like kind of bridging the gap, that's the one big thing my friend Tex Weston with Texas Front Porch brings up a lot is bridging the gap, is bringing people together and having those communication and having those talks when we really needed this field. Well, it's the idea of open discourse and hypothesis. Hypothesis is the first step of science. And in the world of hypothesis, you're allowed to hypothesize anything. Yes. Through experimentation and data sets and things like that, we'll get to whether or not that hypothesis is valid or not. You know, through experimentation, we'll poke and prod a hypothesis till it comes to a point of, well, you know, there's a valid theory. Not full evidence yet, because hey, even the theory of evolution right now is still a theory. It's not the fact of evolution. It's not the law of evolution. It's still a working theory. Yes. You know? So to have even that kind of conversation with people, to be able to be open-minded, to be able to once again talk with someone like Barton, who is very, very much ingrained in the Dogman camp, things like that. Absolutely different conversation than having a conversation with someone like you, but I am perfectly willing to have all the conversations and see it from all sides, because if we don't, there's going to be things that we miss, and it's those trails that come together that we need to focus on, you know? Yes. Like, it's funny, like how much you see with data sets with cryptozoology. how much of it has turned into also recently, big conversation point I had during the Alabama Bigfoot conference is how much cryptozoology and just 14 research itself has changed in the past 5-10 years.
Yeah.
At one point, research, real true research was very much important. And I've noticed nowadays a lot of it is the storytelling aspect, is like what Jason calls it, the folklore aspect of cryptozoology.
Yeah.
How much of it is really people researching and how much of it is people telling everyone else's stories?
And the stories are important. The stories are important with that because, as we've discussed on the show previously, not only with you, but with Adam Davies, like Adam Davies has gone out looking for the Yeti with National Geographic. He ain't going to the Himalayas if he doesn't have enough stories to show that, okay, this is a worthwhile venture. We have enough stories from enough of a time span to say, let's check this out. Now, the next step is does the area support it?
Yes.
Will it support the size of wildlife? Will it support a small breeding population over time? Does it have enough water? Does it have enough food? If those next criteria are met, buddy, now we got an expedition.
Yes.
So you've got to start with the stories. The stories are massively important, and having even a safe space for sharing those stories is massively important. A space beyond ridicule to share stories.
And it's like funny because, like, for instance, like my workplace is where I work at. They're like, oh yeah, you're the guy that hunts Bigfoot and this like that. And then it's funny when people start to know you. They're like, wait, my uncle saw this, my cousin saw this, I saw this. And it's like you're getting all these stories, and they're like, we never had any idea who to give these stories to before.
Yeah.
Like, do they go online? They don't know where to even go online. Like, do they go to Bigfoot BFRO? If someone has like a ghost story, who do I say this to?
Yeah.
Like, how many of these stories? Like, we have like that idea of like, okay, for every one Bigfoot report, there's probably 100 that don't go reported.
Mm-hmm.
It's like same thing with this. Like, when you are out there in the field and you have your name kind of recognized, people are like, oh yeah, let me give you this story. Let me give you this story.
Yeah.
And that's like to an extent why like I love doing these events, because how many people come in and they've seen a Bigfoot or they've seen something and they had no idea what to turn to, so they came to a conference.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm really looking forward to like also the Symposium of the Strange, because this kind of also has an area of people can come out and give their stories. People can come out and say what they need to say and go from there.
And it's interesting because the more I go to, especially the more with major talking head people, like I got to spend quite a bit of quality time at Stairway to the Stars in Vegas with Ronnie LeBlanc from Expedition Bigfoot, things like that. And wicked cool guy, like just general cool dude, bought him a cup of coffee a couple days, things like that. And just a generally good human being to begin with. And to see him in casual light like that, then to see him step behind his booth. And it's interesting to see how many people come up with cell phone in hand. Ronnie, check out what I have. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like this. And, even talking with him and other people privately, like, yes, it can get wearing. But at the same time, that's half of the intrigue, is the fact that like you have catalyzed other people and you've catalyzed other people to share their experience, to share their very, very intimate experience that many people, they may not be able to trust them with it, and that's family, that's friends that they may not be able to trust with it.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like also like, when people like on like television, like Ronnie and like King Gerhard, they also have almost like a fan pool to an extent. Like I remember my first ever Bigfoot conference was actually back in 2015. I was 14 years old, went to Jefferson for the first time ever.
Wow.
And I seen King Gerhard. I'm like, oh my God, it's King Gerhard, the guy that was on TV that like I love, and like came up to him and said, hey, my name's Ryan Edwards. Like I'm a really big fan of yours. I bought his books. I got it signed and all that. And then like 5 years later, I came back to Jefferson for the first time as a vendor, having someone that wrote a book. And I'm like, huh.
Yeah.
Funny how that switch over now. It's like, wow, someone that I look up to now, I work with. And for instance, like Symposium of Strange, I'm literally speaking with Kid on the same stage.
Yeah.
And this is someone I looked up to, and he's like, dude, don't say you looked up to me when you were a kid. Don't make me feel old. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm just young. I guess it works like that.
I mean, not to call a spade. I'm pretty old too. So, but at the same token, it's one of those, as I've said every time you're on, like, you are the new blood, man. Like, it's funny to me whenever I walk into a conference as a sponsor. I frequently feel, especially places like MUFON, IRVA, where I'm like a lifetime member, that kind of stuff, lifetime member and contributor and all kinds of things. And when they see me, they're like, oh, look at the young blood. I'm like, brother, I am almost 50. I am not the demographic that you need to be sporting around as the quote young blood. Like you need 30-year-olds. And a lot of that, yes, is location. Like last year at the IRVA conference, it was very different. There were, because of our proximity to college and things like that in North Carolina, there was a good contingent of younger 20-year-olds, like 25-year-olds attending the conference over the weekend.
Like earlier this year at the Shirts, the paranormal conference down here in San Antonio. Yeah. Because you're right next to a big city, I noticed it's a lot more younger people, like people from in town. Like here we have UTSA, we have Texas A&M San Antonio. You have all these younger people coming in.
Yep.
Well, for instance, if you have something like Jefferson Bigfoot Conference, you're kind of far away from all the big cities, and you get the local people, you get the people that are willing to travel. But a lot of times I've noticed the younger people, like 20 to like 25, aren't willing to travel a lot, especially a long distance or something like that. So it's like how much – that's like one big thing with me and you is the metrics, the numbers, looking at what's the demographics? How can we change and what can we do to bring in different demographics to this field?
Well, and I think once again, Ryan, a lot of that is the open-mindedness of community and the understanding that events, shows, things like that, they should be trying to bring communities together. One of the prime example that I just had a whole episode that was a community address episode regarding, and I got the niece of Betty and Barney Hill on. Recently, like Dr. Stephen Greer made a very, very large statement about the preeminent, pretty much the first recorded case of alien abduction, Betty and Barney Hill, and stated that was a fake abduction, that it was falsified, and that it was done by actors of the U.S. Air Force under the guise of gathering DNA from people in a program to do such. And it's like, wow, that's a big hot tater of a statement to stand on a corner with, doctor.
Yes.
You know, like former science advisor for presidents, doctor, involved in the UFO disclosure community. It's like, wow, that is a big, especially with the physical evidence that is there for Betty and Barney Hill. The fact that like she was shown a star map and drew it out, that we didn't know about that star map or the way that star system was for like another 10 years almost.
Yeah.
So
like we didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Until afterwards.
Yeah. But it's one of those, Ryan, that, you know, within communities, those things reverberate. Those things literally divide communities.
Yes.
You know? And if not handled properly, if that's just kind of left out there to hang without people being able to respond, without people like Kathleen Marden, who is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill and worked with Dr. Stanton Friedman on her aunt and uncle's case, you know, has all of the scientific documents, has the watch that's still stopped to this day and won't work, you know, things like that. To be able to give her a platform of response within the community is amazing. It's great.
Yeah. Like
And it's funny that I didn't see more people give her a platform of response, you know, to be able to broach that in the community, to be able to say, hey, here's the conversation from the other side, you know, and we have to do that. We have to be willing to, in these communities, whether it's paranormal, whether it's cryptid, whether it's a UFO, UAP, whether it's Fortean and esoteric studies, what have you, we've got to be open-minded enough and open-hearted enough to be able to have that conversation and realize that, like we've said so many times with you on the show, you may find a folklore expert, but finding a Bigfoot expert, you know, you may be an expert in the folklore, things like that, but how can you be an expert in a creature that is yet to be proven to exist?
Yeah.
You know,
like we always say, there's no experts in this field. There are researchers, there are enthusiasts, but there are no experts. And the people that say they are experts, you're running with too much of your ego and not with too much of your brain. Like, you're letting your ego get in command, but that's a whole other thing right there, is making sure, like, okay, like even with me, like the Sasquatch phenomena. Yeah. Because we don't know for sure what it is, I can't say 100% my hypothesis is correct. That's why it's just a hypothesis, not a theory yet.
That's right.
Like, we have the data for it, but until this animal is discovered, it is old theory and old just hypothesis.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you have to be willing to say that. You know, you have to be willing to say that we are hypothesizing the existence, that the three people speaking at the symposium have evidence that they have gathered, have stories that they have gathered, things like that lead them evidentiarily down a path.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
for instance, I think the other day when I posted on like my Facebook about the symposium, I saw someone like leave a comment like, do you think they would ever let like someone that's a skeptic go speak? And like in the back of my mind, I'm like, yes. I want to bring in those different perspectives.
Absolutely.
Like, okay, we have someone that believes Bigfoot's physical. We have someone here that believes it's not physical. Let's have those both people speak and have that civil discussion. Yeah. Have that civil discourse and see, okay, maybe we can learn from each other and see what we can do. Because that's something that's kind of lacking in this field, is also this communication between the fields. It's like we were talking about earlier before the show. Yeah. It's pretty much Bigfoot, paranormal, like Bigfoot, cryptid, paranormal, UFO. All these are all aspects of the Fortean research, but they're all seen as their own little worlds. Yeah. But how can we communicate between those worlds and see what we can learn from each other? Like, okay, the UFO UAP community, they've made a lot of movements in the past 10, 15 years. Yep. How can we have that for the Bigfoot community? Okay, the paranormal aspect, that's kind of an aspect with cryptozoology. How can we learn from the paranormal field and help out with cryptozoology? How can the paranormal field learn from cryptozoology with maybe collecting data? All this communication we need, all this education we need, but yet we really don't have it. Unless like someone like you, Chris, that like goes to different types of conferences, that goes to different types of communities and learns from a little piece of each one. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, that's, I guess that's just how I was taught to learn, was go to the library, look it up, read other opinions, read dissenting opinions, you know, even whenever I look at news, it's one of the, and I see it regularly in my group. In the Curious Realm group, you know, sometimes people will message me like, hey, man, you already posted that story. I'm like, yes. However, I'm posting that story from a website that typically has a dissenting opinion. Yes. And the next time I post that story, it's like from out of the country, you know, so it's like, so you're reading it through different lenses. And it's also showing you the fact that, look, it wasn't just this one that covered the story. So it's not like they're trying to like, you know, just put it in this box. Like, here's another view that covered the story. Here's one from outside of the country that's going to give you a totally different lens on the topic than our myopic Western lens, you know, things like that. So you've got to take those things into consideration, and you've got to be willing
to read a dissenting opinion, you know? That's part of science. That's part of the feedback part of science is the thrust and parry of debate. Being able to look at not just topics, but pools of datum, you know, pools of data and data fields dispassionately. And just as a point of datum, nobody's trying to crush a paradigm or what you believe. Here's a point of datum to add to your data set that should, in theory, as a proper skeptic, because I proudly wear the badge skeptic, proudly, all day. It is a dirty, dirty word in most of our communities, Ryan. That we run in because of the way it's misused. People think a skeptic is there to poo-poo ideas and to shoot holes in the no. The true skeptic is there and ready to have their mind changed, ready to have a debate based on the facts at hand. If you have new facts, feel free to present them. I'm here to open-mindedly listen to them and hopefully change my mind, you know, or change what I believe and why I believe it because of the new data provided. That's a proper skeptic, you know, like a proper skeptic is no different than a scientist. We're just trying to get to the bottom of things. And I'm willing to dismiss that, 98% of pictures do not show something paranormal. They do not show something out of the norm. Like to say 80% of them do, like if there's easily 100 pictures posted each day in the communities that we belong to on Facebook alone, to say 99% of those have a picture of anomaly in them removes the concept of anomaly.
Yeah, it's almost unrealistic too. Like with skeptics, like I always tell people, there's a difference between skeptics and true non-believers.
Yes,
it's like the difference between an agnostic and an atheist. You have people that truly don't believe, and cannot change their mind because they don't see your data. Yeah, they won't even look at it in the first place. Then you have the skeptic that will possibly change their mind. That will like, okay, let me see, and okay, maybe you do have some good points. You do, okay, this point maybe not so good, and they're willing to change their mind.
Absolutely.
With some people that are in this field or against this field, they won't change their mind according to any type of like tactic or strategy or any type of data. Like you have the people that like, okay, no matter what anyone says, Bigfoot's not real or UFOs aren't real. Okay, but let's look at this data. Let's look at this. No, I don't want to look at the data in the first place. Yeah. Because it's all not real. Dude, then you're not a skeptic anymore. You're just a non-believer. Yeah. Or you're just someone that's wanting to break down the data that's going against the field. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that's just it. You know, the idea that you will never change the mind of a true believer. You will never change the mind of a true non-believer. Yeah. You know, because they've already built that firmament for the wall. Yeah. Like they come to the table having the conversation on the way to the table, you know. Yes. And it's hard because you know, the idea should once again be just good open-minded conversation, not trying to convince anybody of paradigm, not trying to bring somebody over to your paradigm of thinking, anything like that. There's a gentle art of conversation that has sadly been lost society-wide, Ryan, where we're able to talk to people about what they believe and why they believe it and just go, wow, that is fascinating. And accept it. Yeah. And just accept it as one of the many facets on the gem that is that person, that without that facet, that person wouldn't be that gem. You know? Yeah. For some reason, we feel this overwhelming need to try to bring somebody over to our way of thinking. We have this innate need for want of belonging and want of confirmation. And when you marry those two things with confirmation bias, you end up with a very dangerous stew. And that just ends up in the world of dogma, period. I don't care if you're talking religious dogma, political dogma about dog man. You know, the rules, like, no, these are the rules. It's like, wow, okay. Suddenly there's rules to dog man, I guess. Yeah. Like, you know, like,
I've had a conversation before, like, you know, me, I try to say scientific and biological, but to an extent, even a scientific field can become almost religion itself.
Oh, yeah.
The dogma, they're like, okay, no, it has to be like this, has to be like this. We've discovered all the species in the world. But that becomes almost a religion because people aren't willing to break their minds of that dogma. Yeah. They're not willing to look outside the box and see, like, okay, no, there are possibilities. Yeah. Maybe not probabilities, but there are possibilities. And science is about turning possibility into probability.
That's right. That was a lot of the conversation in the beginnings of the NASA panels in the investigation of UFO UAP that just happened this last year. Many people in communities were upset. And I mean, to the point, Ryan, where they were contacting NASA scientists who had just gotten involved with the topic, telling them that they're part of a massive cover-up. That, you know, they're taking, and it's like, number one, scientists are finally getting involved. So you're gonna go and threaten them on, like, you know what makes them not want to be involved? Going in, like, the fact that the head of NASA and the program for that literally had to come out and preface the panel with, hey, there have been some online threats to people that are sitting up here. That's not where this belongs. You know, you can't come at people and tell them that they're doing this and covering it up when they've just now gotten involved with the topic. And that's not how they want to be involved with the topic. Like, they'll leave and not be researching it. And then we'll be right back where we were, you know? And the idea that the conversation that followed that was, we as scientists have been woefully disregarding our job because it's been put into this Kleenex bin of UFO for years. Relabeling of it to unidentified aerial phenomenon lies directly in the purview of science. You've got to find out what that 5% remainder of solution is. Otherwise, your calculation is incomplete. You've got a 5% remainder somewhere. Find the anomaly that caused that. You know, like, that's directly the charge of science. So, yeah, it's interesting to hear NASA say, like, because these things have been relabeled now, scientists are suddenly open to the idea of researching it because they'll no longer be ridiculed for being a physicist who's, you know, studying UFOs on the side. Yeah,
that's like, it's the same thing with, like, the big with, like, Sasquatch and Bigfoot. Like, how many people want to hear that they're researching Bigfoot? Yeah. But then you say a unknown primate. Yeah. Those two, that change of verbatim, that change of nouns, changes the whole aspects of the field. Yeah. That's why, like, for instance, I don't like saying unknown animals, like unknown primates. I like to say unrecognized. Yeah. Because these animals are known by locals, but they're not recognized by science.
Uncategorized even.
Yeah. Like, with cryptozoology, it's like, how many times do people hear, like, oh, cryptid or cryptozoology or, like, monster hunting, and they immediately put their minds off away from it because of the, like, they see even cryptozoology as a pseudoscience in and of itself. Yeah. But if you see cryptozoology as an aspect of zoology, we don't really see it as a pseudoscience anymore. These are unrecognized species, not yet known to us. What can we do to discover them?
I challenge the term pseudoscience to begin with. Yes. Because it's all made up. Yeah. You know, it's one of those, like, with that, once again, to go back to the beginning of the conversation, without the hypothesis and the wild idea, we have no idea what to narrow down from. So, like, it's all rooted in hypothesis. It's all rooted in the concept of something, you know? So, the idea that cryptozoology is literally the search for uncategorized animals, animals that are spoken about and have been spoken about, and the search for said, Yeah. One of the great points that I've been using regularly since we spoke about it is that discovery timeline, the idea of when an animal is openly spoken about, and when we decide to start looking for it and how long it typically takes. And, the idea that, yes, local indigenous populations have, spoken of Sasquatch for generations, but it was never their going effort to go and find and discover that.
Yeah.
As it is for Anglo society, which finally heard about it in a greater sense in about the 60s. So, we aren't on that timeline of discovery yet.
And we have the sense of like when it was especially indigenous tribes when it comes to cryptozoology, especially cryptids. Think about it. It's always been there for them. So to them, it's just a part of natural life. Sasquatch, other unknown primates around the world. It's just an aspect of life for them. But for us, like when it comes to like European Westerners, we have to go discover it.
Yep.
And like that timeline of discovery, for instance, like I always bring up the gorilla. The gorilla was talked about for like almost 200 or 300 years before it was discovered in 1847. And hell, the lowland gorilla was discovered in 1902, and that's the bigger of the two species.
Yeah.
So you have these old traditions of something giant, hairy, human-like living in the mountains of Africa. Then it's discovered in 1847.
Yeah.
The gorilla was literally a cryptid before it was ever discovered, but yet you don't see zoologists calling gorillas cryptids because it's been discovered, it's been recognized. Now it's no longer cryptozoological; it's now zoological.
Yeah.
And like same thing happened with Bigfoot. Like if we discover Sasquatch, it's no longer cryptozoological; it's now zoological. That's why, like, I had a discussion like with other researchers. I believe cryptozoology is the first step of zoology. We have to get the old traditions, get the data, see what this animal is, then discover it. Then we can research it like it's any old species out there in the woods.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just it. We've got to be willing to look at things and consider them, even in the days of the original naturalists, stuff like that. Like that's a lot of the idea behind Origin of Species, is that these are specialized animals that may share a trait or may share a familial group somewhere, but it becomes so specialized that they're now in small numbers, and it's pretty regular. We discover about on average 10,000 species a year. I'm trying to remember, there was just a bird that was rediscovered in New Zealand that was considered extinct for a long time.
Yes.
Even the ivory-billed woodpecker is back in North America.
And I remember, like, it's funny because I read a lot of the old, like, cryptozoological books, like Cryptozoology A to Z, On the Track of Unknown Animals, and they're referencing the ivory-billed woodpecker as a cryptid, as an animal that's not yet recognized. And in modern day, it's in your local textbook for birds that are in your area. So it's funny how something that was once considered cryptozoological is now zoological.
Yeah.
Like, that thing is like if the thylacine was ever discovered, one day when we discover that creature still existing, same thing will happen there. It'll go from being in a cryptid book to being in your local textbook.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. And even then it comes to the fact of when later evidence comes about, because I've in my actual bookcase, I have my astronomy textbook from I graduated high school in 1993, everybody, just to date myself. But I took astronomy my senior year, did well enough that when my teacher retired from being an astronomy teacher that year, she gave me the teacher's book. Loved astronomy, still love it. And I don't know, my astronomy textbook has Pluto as a planet. Yeah. My son's planetary chart doesn't, because science has changed. The definition of planet and planetesimal and planetoid have come along. And Pluto is no longer a full-blown planet. It is a planetesimal.
Yes.
So, you know, because it's slightly oblong in shape. It's not spheroid enough to be an actual planet. So things are changed. Definitions are changed. Understandings are changed. Maps are changed. Textbooks are changed. And, you know, it's something that we get into regularly whenever we talk with Catherine Chilgen about the Shakespeare conspiracy, things like that. You know, the fact that the man that we know as William Shakespeare was a cabbage farmer, you know, not an educated person, not somebody that could write all kinds of plays, things like that, barely sign his name. But it's interesting that despite all of the evidence to the contrary, people want to hold on to the idea that the Shakespeare we know wrote everything. It changes nothing, Ryan. It doesn't change the defense of your thesis. You could defend a hypothesis if you want to. Your thesis doesn't have to be based on anything real, as long as you can defend it. Yeah. That's the point of a thesis. So even if you did your thesis work and got your PhD in Shakespearean studies 30 years ago, they aren't going to come take your PhD. They aren't going to revoke your work. Okay? Like that's not how that works. Your tenure at the university isn't going to disappear because Shakespeare that we know isn't the dude that wrote the plays. Yeah. You know, it didn't change the whole world. Nobody lost their PhD because Pluto is no longer a planet. So the huge impact to humanity, why not look at it further? Why not investigate further? That's always my thought is, you know, these other things, it doesn't massively change humanity like that. You know, it's not going to pull anybody's, it's not going to take away Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum's primatology degree. It's not going to happen.
If anything, to an extent, it might bring more people into the field.
It might.
Like, a lot of these citizen scientists might actually become real scientists because they're like, okay, I helped discover new species through this data. Let's go get a formal education and then become like a quote-unquote real scientist.
Sure. And one of the things I advocate regularly is consider, if you are out there squatching, if you're out there with trail cams, things like that, good God, contact your local university or local wildlife conservation program. Ask them where you can send pictures. Ask them where you can send video. You are out there in places that they do not have funding to cover. Yeah. You can be contributing to the actual scientific data of that area. You could be helping to contribute to the widening of a conservation area, which, if you're talking about a rare species, if you're talking about something that's living in a small population, it needs that microclimate. It needs that localized area in order to live properly. So you're doing not only that species a favor that you're trying to investigate and prove, but you're also doing the scientists who are working to save black bears and deer and everything else. You know, like you can help give them bird counts in areas that they can't reach because you're out there squatching every weekend. So contact your local university, contact your local wildlife conservancy, you know, contact your local zoo, see if there are researchers there that need that kind of footage or photography. Because you can be helping the cause of science right there.
Yeah.
But once again, it takes that want to reach across the community, Ryan. It takes that want to widen the community and widen the community aspect and understand that science should not be working in vacuum of this information, and this information should not be working in vacuum of science.
Yeah,
you know?
Like that's one thing that kind of annoys me to an extent. How many people will bring up, well, science ignores Bigfoot. Science ignores this. Science doesn't look at us. Science doesn't agree with us. Well, it's not science's job to ignore data. It's just that the data hasn't been brought to them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a really formal educator or anything like that, or scientist or anything like that, but coming from a perspective of a little bit of academics, it's not our idea to get rid of the data, but you have to bring the data in the first place. Well, you can't just be like, hey, I saw Bigfoot. You have to have the data sets. You have to have the formal, like, kind of education to be able to bring forward that information.
Well, and even the detailed information, you know, like, okay, you took a picture out in the woods. Where was it? What time of day was it? What were the circumstances of the picture? Yeah. What was the setting of the camera that you took it with? The ISO speed, everything else, you know, things you would use for regular jotting of notes if you were a photographer. Like I have all that for whenever I take pictures of Jupiter. Like I take notes. This was the ISO speed I used for those shots, this through this, you know, so that whenever I look at them for editing later, I can be like, ooh, wow, I need to remember that ISO speed. It brings out the bands better, you know, that kind of stuff. But that's all data that you should be collecting as you collect that. And we should definitely do, we should have somebody like, this is a great person for it. We should get Greg Lawson, the paranormal detective. He should be one of our next speakers at Symposium of the Strange, literally talking about proper forensic gathering of evidence and how to catalog the evidence that you get as though you are a criminal investigator. Like there's a reason why when they pick up a random sock near a crime scene, it goes into a bag, and everything about that sock has been categorized on an evidence tag, where it was found, what time it was found, you know, the condition it was found in, things like that.
Yeah, that's like something that's lacking in this field. That's why, like, in my mind, one of the main people I really look up to in this field is Shelley Covington, Montana.
Damn right.
Because Shelley, she knows the science. She knows, okay, when I have a sighting, I'm going to do this, collect what time of day was it? What was a lunar cycle? What time of year? She gets all that information because that's all the information we need. Well, not just where was it, what time of day, what did the creature look like. No, you need every little minute piece of data because you don't know what could be helpful.
And how do you keep that data? How do you collect a bone in the field to make sure that it's still viable for lab work? You know, how do you collect a hair sample in the field to make sure that you don't cross-contaminate it? Because there's always going to be some cross-contamination, don't get me wrong. And that's why typically whenever you send something to a lab, they will ask for a sample of your collection. Like send us a fingernail scraping or a couple of hairs, or a saliva sample so that we have something to negate. Like, okay, we know what Chris's fingerprints look like. We can take all of those off the doorknob. We know Chris went into his studio every single day. You know, you're eliminating things from the data field, and that's just as important as what you add to the data field, is what you can call out. So, we should really do a whole night of proper evidence gathering, data gathering in the world of paranormal, parapsychological, paracryptid, everything.
Yeah, and it's an important one. That's like one big thing with Symposium of the Strange is bringing in that stuff that you might never hear about. It's like bringing in the different perspectives and bringing in that information because, like, everyone loves a good conference and stuff like that. But having it smaller, a little bit more like intimate, makes it really feel more personal and helps bring in that information because there's a lot of stuff that maybe someone that's maybe watched Finding Bigfoot once might not know, or watched Ghost Adventures once that might not know that when they want to get interested in the field, they can bring that information to it and help out everyone when it comes to 14 research.
That's right. That's right. And you know, be really beginning things on a proper foot, you know, and even like we talk about with whenever we have Chester Moore on, the idea of knowing how to go out and do that, and not only do it well, but do it safely, understanding what your dangers are as well for going out in the field, you know, understanding that, like, maybe before you go out at night and do this kind of stuff, maybe you should go out and get like a basic aid training and, things like that. Or maybe take a weekend wilderness survival class.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
It's like, be prepared. Like, when people, like, I've had people come out to me like, hey, I want to get interested in field research. How should I do it? Well, everything
very carefully.
Camping, every piece of, and from all the piece of equipment and all that, bring that, then bring extra. Like, bring what you need for the actual expedition. But, like, treat it like it could become a survival experience.
That's right.
Because you don't know if it could become one.
Yep. And that's just it. Once again, I love having you on, Ryan. I love our conversations because you're such a level-headed individual. And even whenever it comes to collecting this kind of data, analyzing this kind of data, the fact of how you gather it, why you gather it, how you treat it and how you look at it, all of those things have to be done both passionately, properly, and dispassionately on the back end.
Yes.
And that's why I'm a big proponent of even, especially in the last year or so, talking the way I do at conferences and things about frequencies and that kind of stuff. The idea of, when you're prepping that gear, just think about the gear. Don't think about the location. Don't think about what you're going to, like, don't think about stories you heard about the location, that kind of stuff. Like, you may actively be affecting the experiment in a way that you may not be intending, and that's a whole conversation in and of itself. But it's interesting to get into the idea of, like, you may be charging that environment with a full-on intent, and be changing things. So, coming at it even from a scientific point of view like that, as you're preparing to go out in the field and trying to be blank slate and trying not to put past experiences on what you're going to do. It's all very important. So, Ryan, thank you so much for the time. As always, I appreciate it. Let everybody know where they can go to get their copy of Sasquatch, Prehistory of a Living Legend, as well as your other work. And of course, about Symposium of the Strange. Of
course. If you guys are interested in my personal works, Sasquatch of Prehistory or Cryptids of the World, you can easily check it out on Amazon.com. Big Sasquatch of Prehistory will also be available on Eerie Lights Publishing, as well as I know here at CuriousRealm.com on the shop, it will also be available.
Yep.
And with Symposium of the Strange, if you guys are interested in this, I would really highly recommend checking it out. You can check it out on symposiumofstrange.com. Check it out on our Eventbrite or our Facebook. It shows us where the tickets are at, shows you where it's going to be at. It is going to be scheduled for July 31st at a place a little down here in San Antonio called Match Time Machine. There's a little place in the back where they have speakers. You can come in. We have a stage. We have it all set up. Think of it as like a little mini conference. We have multiple types of tickets for you guys. We have $5 for kids, $10 adults. And if you're really interested in it, I would highly recommend our $30 VIP tickets. $30 VIP tickets, you would get first a signed poster by all the speakers, myself, Ken Gerhardt, and Rob Nichols, and whoever future speakers in the future, and a book from one of the speakers, signed by the speaker themselves. It is a worthwhile event, guys. This is hopefully where the future of paranormal is going to. Small, little intimate one-on-one sessions with speakers and being able to get your questions out there and discuss with people that you've maybe seen on television once or twice, and you can sit down and really talk to them and get their perspectives on the field, especially like Ken Gerhardt. He has a wealth of knowledge, even more than me, even me to an extent, and hopefully we can keep this event going for a while. Have it every month, every last Wednesday. We're hoping to schedule it for every last Wednesday of the month, and bring in different perspectives, bring in the paranormal, the UFO, how to collect data, how to even have discourse between the fields.
That's right.
Hell, we can even do nights of like you being one Bigfoot guy, one UFO guy, and see how they discuss.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's absolutely essential for the communities to know that there is a place, that they can go, not only for information, but to be able to get together and talk and be able to share their stories. So thank you for helping create that.
Of course. I see Symposium of Strange as a worthwhile experiment, and hopefully, if it goes well, this could be the future of this field.
Absolutely,
so man. History, guys.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, as always, for coming on. Always appreciate it. Hold the line real quick while we close things out with the audience, my friend.
Of course.
While you are online checking out everything from Symposium of the Strange at symposiumofthestrange.com, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can find everything Curious Realm. It's where you can like, follow, subscribe. It's where you can comment. It's where you can find the store at CuriousRealm.com/store, as Ryan said, where you can buy not only his books, but also books, videos, courses, all kinds of things from all of our guests. If you are putting together a paranormal event, a cryptid event, event of the esoteric type, make sure to stop on by curiousevents.org. We have some fantastic AV packages there. We also help just list shows. So if you'd like to get your show listed on our website, so you can make sure that you aren't necessarily competing with other shows in your area, make sure to stop on by curiousevents.org, everybody. And of course, do not forget, if you're a Roku user, stop on by and download the all-new Curious Realm Roku channel, full of not only our episodes, but tons of binaural beat and therapy meditation music made by yours truly. Thank you so much, as always, everybody, for tuning in. It is your open hearts, your open minds that make the conversation. And without the conversation, humanity does not move forward. So remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Stay curious. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. To download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault, or become a sponsor of Curious Realm, visit our website at curiousrealm.com. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast and video services, as well as KPNL Radio, APRTV, and the Curious Realm app for Roku devices. Curious Realm is a proud member of the Ground Zero Media and Aftermath Media family of podcasts. For more great shows and members-only content, visit groundzeromedia.org and aftermathmedia.com today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious, and remember, the other side is always watching.